Hey guys, so today's the 10th episode of the Roux Method Solve Critiques. This is a series that I started last year, but it ended up being a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. Each video took many hours to make since I had to reconstruct and then write down notes for every solve and then film it and edit. So I kind of put it off for a long time, or I was originally planning on doing 10 episodes. So this will be the very last one. I want to thank everyone who submitted solves and apologize to anybody whose solves I didn't really get to. Hopefully you can watch the other ones and kind of take those tips as well. So in this one, we'll be critiquing solves from Sean Villanueva. He's a Roux Method cuber from the Philippines, and he's very young and very fast, so I think he has a lot of potential, and I'd like to help him out. So here's this first solve, the scramble. You saw the time already. So what he did was he rotated with Y2 and started with blue front, solving this red and white block. So he saw this pair, the red-blue, and he did U prime R2 to solve it, and then D prime to solve that. But he did the D prime with his... He kind of finger tricked it like this, so he did U prime R2 and then D prime with his right hand, RY back prime, but that had a regrip in the middle the way he did it. Then for this pair, he did RU prime to put it back there, RU, R prime, U, F2. So that solution's actually really cool for the second pair. I've never really seen that before. It's a little bit inefficient, but if it's already set up there, I think that's something I'm going to use. So as I mentioned, that first block could be a little bit more inefficient. I mean, it could be a little more efficient. There were several regrips in there, including after the R2, because he did the R2 and then had to move his hand to do the D prime. So in that case, I'd recommend that you use the lefty D prime finger trick. So it's regripless. Also for this B prime, you use your thumb. That's something I do too, but it's a bit of a bad habit because it's not that consistent. So I'd recommend trying the index push like that. It can be a little bit better. For this one, there isn't much to say in terms of the finger tricks necessarily, but what I'd try to do for this instead is, if you see this DR edge, you can kind of do F prime and solve the pair and the DR edge at the same time. So you could go like this, and that solves DR and the pair. So your first block there was 2.1 seconds, which in my opinion is kind of slow for your speed. So to improve that, I would recommend overall just working on your finger tricks and efficiency. So not only try planning out the moves, but also think about the finger tricks that you're doing so that you can optimize and minimize the number of regrips. So, sorry, a better solution that I found on the scramble would be with blue-yellow. So we see this kind of pseudo pair because if you do that move, then that pair's solved. But blue-yellow, this goes with this. So it could be U prime, R wide prime, back prime, like that, and that'll make a line like this and then this line. So then this corner will be left, so you can do U prime, RU, R prime, D prime, and if you're paying attention to the DR edge, you can see that R prime back prime puts it there and then the D prime will be there, so this actually solves DR too. So starting like this, the solution would be like U prime, R wide prime, back prime to make that. Notice how I haven't done any regrips, and then this line, and DR is solved there. So for your second block, you started like this, and your transition from first block to second block was actually really good. You immediately did an R wide, and then you R2 prime. But during that R2 prime, you kind of, I think you started with your hand a bit higher, and then you got stuck, and then had to regrip to here, and then do another R prime. So for that kind of, as I said before, think about your finger tricks too. So know what you're going to do ahead of time so you can start with your hand in a better position so you don't have to regrip in the middle of it. And then there you did U and solved that pair. So your first square was really fast and really good, except for that one regrip. I like your transition. But then you paused here and solved this pair after. So then you did R wide, U prime, M, U, R wide prime. So the solution for your second block was good. Realistically, in a solve, I would have done the same thing. But a more efficient solution that like I said, I probably wouldn't see realistically, but is more efficient. So if you just do that same R wide, you see it makes this pair and also that line in the back, and then this line's also there. So then you can just do R2U, R2U, and solve them like that. So here I'm just going to do your second block again to show you how you can look ahead to your second player. So once you've done this move, you basically can do the pair blindfolded, right? Because you know that's there and this is here. So immediately you should be looking ahead to the next one, and you see this corner, once you're doing this R prime, is attached to this edge, the DR edge. And once you see this, you should know exactly what the next pair is going to be. Either the edge is going to be green top or orange top. You're going to do some type of R, some type of U, some type of M, and then the rest is pretty obvious. So right now you should be looking ahead to your next pair. So while you're doing this, you should be peeking at this one, seeing, okay, that's not the one I'm looking for. You see that one come out of the slot, you're like, okay, that's what the one it is, and then you can immediately go into that. Okay, moving on to CMLL. So for this, you started with U2 prime to recognize, and then did a U prime, and your alg was good. Good finger tricks, it's basically the best alg for that case. But for this case specifically, I'm going to recommend you learn the multi-angle recognition, because the moment you see this U case and these two match, you should already just right away, even if you don't know multi-angle, do UF. And the reason for that is because both of the algs that have these two matching, it's either F sexy F prime or it's this case. And both of them start with UF, so you should immediately do that. Then you should peek at the right side to see what it is. An even better solution would be to look at this and look at the left one or the right one. So if this isn't opposite, so if this were blue, you'd know these two would be opposite and it would be F sexy F prime, but it's red, so these two have to match. But in general, for this case, when you have these two matching, immediately do UF, and then you can figure out whether it's sexy F prime or that. For your LSC, I think this was the worst step of this solve. Your finger tricks and everything was good. Look ahead was pretty good during most of it, but during ULUR edges, you got kind of confused. So you started EO with M prime, U prime, M prime, and then solved EO like this. So that's fine, not much to say there. But then I guess you kind of got lost with your ULUR edges, and you did U2 prime, U2 prime, M prime, and then finally did a U to set them up opposite to each other, and then MU to M prime, and then from here everything was good. So then you just did U prime M2 U, and then your 4C recognition was perfect. So to fix that problem with the not finding the ULUR edges, obviously you're going to want to find them as fast as you can, preferably during CMLL, so then you can be tracking them during your EO. But an even better way to do that would be to do EOLR for this case. So it's actually pretty easy. Instead of just doing a U prime, you just do U to flip this edge, and now you have the EOLR case. So overall, this solve was 58 moves, which is slightly more inefficient than I'd like you to be, and that can be fixed mostly by working on your first block, both finger tricks and obviously move count, and eliminating those mistakes in LSE. And the only other thing to really work on would be that pause during second block. Other than that, very good solve. We'll move on to the next one. Here's your second scramble. So this one, the solve was a lot better than the first one. It was a 7. So here you basically did the best first block, or the only like really good one I can see. So starting with the red front, you did this green white. So you did it like this, started here, R wide 2, D2 to solve that, and then these two, R2, R wide back prime. Nothing to say there, you did it really quickly. The first block was basically sub 1, which is great. Executed fast, yeah, nothing to improve on that. You used 10 seconds of inspection, which is what I think is basically the sweet spot. You also did that in the first solve, so that's really good. Keep doing what you're doing. So moving on to second block. So you solved this DR edge while flipping this, and I really like that you did that because that's something I always recommend, because white on top for corner isn't that useful. So you did U prime, R prime, U, R prime. Then you solved this pair, so U prime, M2, U2, R wide, U prime, R prime, and then solved this pair. You did U, U, and then regripped and did it like that. So that second block, the solution looks kind of long if you look at it, but it's actually pretty good, similar to what I would have done. However, there's 2 comments I have about that second block. So as I mentioned, the first pair was great. You just flip that and then solve this. But here, there's 2 alternate ways you can solve the second pair. So if you're looking ahead to it from here, you can basically see that it's right in front of you. So your hand ends like this. So instead of regripping, you can just do that U2 like this, and then alternate your hand so you use U with the other one, and that prevents a regrip. And now you can basically transition straight into that CMLL. Or the other option, and what I would recommend, is just like this. So while you're solving that, you see these two come together, and instead of, you can solve them a different way. So while you're doing that, you bring them down like this, pair them up, and solve in the back. For CMLL, it's just the sexy sledge case. So you did U prime to recognize, and then sexy sledge. So there's not much to say here. Obviously, it's a good alg. Nothing else you should really be using for that. But the same thing as with the first solve, you should try not to really panic and do too many AUFs. For this one specifically, you don't even need like multi-angle recognition. You can kind of just like peek at the right side to see what it is. So try during your last pair, try predicting what the OLL case is going to be, or the corner orientation. So then you can immediately peek at a certain side to know what it is. I think that'll help a lot. So your LSE on this solve was actually pretty crazy. It was 18 moves, which is a bit inefficient, and I'll show you why it was inefficient. However, you executed that in 1.8 seconds, which means it was 10 TPS. So it was really nice to look at, and you had good look ahead overall. So your solution was like this. You saw this EO case and did M2, and then solved that error in the back. And then here, LR edge is on the bottom, and then U M2. But here you misaligned the ULUR edges by doing U prime, so now they're not solved. And now your 4C case ended up being 2 or 3 moves more inefficient than what it should have been. So here you did M prime B2 like that. And I'll show you. So here, if you aligned that 4C, it would have been a couple fewer moves. And the other alternative to make it more efficient would be EOLR. So during that CMLL, you should be looking at the bottom, or kind of tilting your head or the cube to peek. So if you see that green is there, you know it's there. So then once you're done this, you know blue is here, and you can immediately, oh, wrong way. You can immediately do the EOLR. So if you swap these two, you get this good arrow, and that leads to a better LSE. Third scramble, you did the red-white block, and for this one, you only use 6 seconds of inspection. I'd like you to use more time, so maybe use a timer that gives 8 and 12 warnings, so you know how much time to use. Especially for this scramble, I think it's important because there's a lot of pairs, so you would want to explore all the different options. But for red-white, you solved this line with that, so you did F prime to orient this, and then U prime L to solve that, U D prime to bring that pair back and solve that, and then R U prime B. So that's a pretty cool solution, and you executed it well. However, one thing you can keep in mind is instead of doing F prime U prime, which breaks the pair, you can just do U prime F prime L D prime, which saves a move because you don't have to put the pair back together. Also, there's a lot of other different blocks you can try out, especially on the scramble since it's pretty easy. So one example would be red-yellow. So we see this is only one move pair like that, and this one's also pretty easy to set up. So you could just do U2 R prime to make that pair, U2 R, and then just F prime B prime. Also, the other option would be green-yellow. We see this pair, and this, so you can just do M2 to make this line, and then this and that can also pair up. So if you do UM2, both solve at the same time, and then you just have to do U, B. All right, so for your second block, you solved it like this. At first you did a U, because you didn't really know what was going on, and then I saw you peek at the bottom to figure out where DR was, and this really you should be planning an inspection, so that really goes into using more of your inspection to plan as much as you can. And then you did a U prime because you figured out what to do. You did M prime and then solved this pair like this. And then there was a slight pause, then you found this and did M prime like that. So for that second block, as I mentioned, it's really important to know where DR is. I'll just show your first block again to show how you can figure out where DR ends up. So for this, F prime, U prime, L, U, D prime doesn't do anything. So the only move that's going to affect the DR edge is R, so you know it's going to be solved. So immediately you can go into that, and you know it'll be solved back there. Now for this first pair, your solution is pretty fine. nothing wrong with it, but what I recommend you try out sometimes is something like this. So if you just do RU R prime to orient this corner, then you can do U R white U prime like that, and then this leaves the same second pair. So for this one, where was I? Yeah, here. So here, while you're doing this, you should see this come up and know that corner's there. And then while you're doing that, you're looking around and you have to find that the edge that goes with this isn't anywhere in sight. So once you do the R wide, you can check to make sure it's there, and then that'll help you look ahead so you don't have to pause between the pairs. So CMLL, you recognize this one pretty quickly. It's pretty easy once, just a pi case, and then U prime, and then this alg. You locked up a bit on that last F prime, like this kind of. You also locked up on the sexy sledge and the other scrambles, so maybe just try working on a bit of turning consistency, maybe drilling some algs. For this alg specifically, the way you executed it was like this. Look at that U, and now your right hand has to regrip, which is kind of slow. So what I recommend you try is something like this. So U prime F, and then this U, do it with your left hand, so your right hand has time to regrip for the F. Alright, LSC on this one was a little interesting. So you did U2 at first, but then once you notice this EOLR case, which I guess you know because you actually did it, you did U prime M prime U M, and that's really good. It sets up these two. So then you did U2 M U prime M prime to put them both on the bottom, and then 4C skip saves the day. So obviously your LSC solution here was basically perfect. It was really good. Executed it pretty quickly once you figured out what was going on. Only bad part about it was that the U2 U prime at the beginning and the pause. I can't really blame you for that though, because the CMLL case, it flips like two edges in the back and also permutes a lot of stuff around, swapping like the D layer with something on the top. So it's a really hard one to transition into LSC because you can't really predict what the EO is going to be. So just keep in mind that those two edges were going to flip, so you're going to have two edges. So either way, you were going to have either this or like something like that. And then once you see that, something like that would have been better. This is the fourth scramble, so for this you inspected for 9 seconds, which is pretty good. Maybe you could use a bit more, but I don't think that really matters because your first block solution was really nice. So what you did is you rotated to here and solved this green-white. So we see this is already paired, green-white's down there, and this is here. So I would have completely missed this solution, and this is actually really nice that you found this on a hard scramble. So you did R wide to bring that here and set this up. Also, the other pair is like this. So once you do U prime R2 to make this line, these two pair up, and then you just D prime R2 U prime B. So the way you executed it wasn't that ideal though. You didn't do the D prime with right hand, so you had to regrip you didn't do the D prime with left hand, you did it with right hand, and that caused a regrip with your right hand. So a better way to execute it and a way to make it regripless would be like this. So starting with thumbs on front, like that. And I think you did a good job of planning your DR because your transition to your second block was really fluid. So it just does a U prime and a U, or just two U primes, so it'll end up there. And then immediately you went into your second block, so you did U prime R prime to orient this. Then here, I'll talk about this after, but what you did for this is U prime R prime U R prime, and that's okay because it gets this. It gets it out of being stuck to the DR edge, and then you solve this pair, like that, and then you were left with this pair in the front, you solve that like this. Okay, so moving on to talking about the second block solution, what I would have done in this case is instead of just doing R prime U R prime, what you can do for this one is actually solve them directly, so like that. And that actually leaves a nicer case for that one. But assuming you did the same solution for that, there's also a better solution for the second pair. So instead of doing M prime U2, which is 2 extra moves, you can just do R, U, M prime, U prime, R prime. And my last comment about this second block is that once you're here, you don't really need to recognize CMLL because this RUM prime U prime R prime thing, it doesn't affect the CMLL because it's just it just does M and U moves and then fixes the right and top. So you can basically go directly into CMLL and not have to pause. Oops, I kind of messed that up there, but I think you see what I mean. Then for your CMLL, you had good execution, but you had a bit of a pause because you didn't take advantage of the last pair not affecting the U layer. So you did this algorithm, which is really good. Also, last thing I think I forgot to mention, but your second block and your blocks in general in this one were really good. You basically had 0 pauses and everything was super fluid. So if you just work on those efficiency things that I told you, I think that can improve your times a lot. Then for LSC, you did M2 to get the arrow, and then U prime, and then here you did U prime U2, but it's okay. 4C skip saves the day again. Yeah, so your LSC was good. You executed it pretty fast, and there weren't any major pauses. Maybe for this one, as I mentioned before, you can try the EOLR. So if you just switch these two edges, this one with this one, you get this good arrow, and just like that. This is the 5th and final scramble, so you started here solving the red-white, and you did DU prime at the same time, and then the pairs ended up with this and that, and then the one you solved first was that corner with this edge, so like that. But the way you did like R prime, U prime, and then regripped and did R prime U. So for that, I'd recommend doing the U with your left hand so you don't have to regrip, like that. And then for the second pair, you solved it like this, R wide U prime. So the solution there was kind of long, it was 14 moves. So the first square was okay, but as I mentioned, you should try limiting those regrips by doing this, that index push over there. And then for the second pair, instead of doing R wide and then solving the pair on the top, you can do U and then solve it in the back like that. Now a better first block on this scramble is blue-yellow, so we have this pair. So you can do D2 to solve that pair, and then B to solve that, and then the last pair is just... So the overall solution is just D2B, which is really regripless and fast and pretty efficient. But I just noticed that all your solves in this average were on white bottom, so I want to ask you if you are color neutral for X2Y, and if you aren't, I recommend that you switch as soon as possible. I think it's really beneficial having 8 blocks instead of 4. Really lets you take advantage of all the pairs that can be possible in the cube. I switched when I was sub 8, I think, so it's definitely not too late. Then for your second block, this is the wrong cube, this one. So for your second block, the transition from first block to second block was good. So you did U prime, and then I really like that you did this. You did R prime, U, R prime. It's not necessary in this case because having this stuck to this isn't that bad because you can just do U2 sexy, double sexy to solve that. But R prime, U, R prime to get it on the top, that's good too. I would probably do the same thing. And then you did U, you did U prime, and then did R prime, U, R, R, U, R prime. Now for that, I'd like you to kind of cancel into that R2 so you don't have to regrip and pause. Or the other option would be to solve them like that, or like that. Okay, then this part is basically where your solve got ruined. You didn't really know where your pieces were, so here you ended up pausing, and you did U2, M2 after finding your pieces to set up these two, and then you locked up on this solution for that pair. So during your second block, you should really be looking ahead to find your second pair. That seems to be a common problem, especially I remember the first solve you had that. So here, once you're doing this, you should be able to see this, the other corner end up right in front of you, and you should remember that it's there. While you're doing that, okay, you're thinking it's going to end up white on top. Where's the edge? It's nowhere to be seen. It's either this one or the back one. Peek at the bottom. It's not this, it's the back one, and it's orange. And an alternate solution for this one So what I do is orient the corner and then solve them in the back like that. CMLL was good. You did U prime, which is fine because it gives your right hand time to regrip, and you need this middle finger on the cube. So if you did a U2, you'd have to like change your grip anyway. So U prime is good. Keeps your middle finger there, so you can do D primes, and then good execution again. Same case as the first one. Nothing to say there. Second, no, not second. What am I saying? LSE. Just M prime, U prime, M prime to get arrow. U2, MU2, M prime, U. Nothing to say there. Good solution. There's nothing else you can really do there. You executed fluidly. So hopefully, Sean, this video has been useful to you and also to anyone else who's watching and is of similar speed or has similar things to work on their solves. So overall, just keep in mind, improve on the first block efficiency. Look ahead during second block to find your second pair is where you seem to pause a lot. CMLL, try multi-angle recognition. LSC, work on learning some EOLR. And overall, I think you should switch to X2Y color neutral if you're not already. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully this was useful.